My second mistake, the one that still makes my blood run cold, was thinking the sounds I heard from the absolute darkness were just the wind. Just a breeze, rustling leaves. Oh, how desperately I wanted that to be true. The 6-hour drive had felt endless, a blur of highway miles slowly giving way to winding back roads, then finally a gravel track that dead-ended at a small, unassuming trailhead. I pulled in late, the sun already dipping below the distant peaks, painting the sky in fiery oranges and deep purples. My boots, still dusty from the journey, hit the ground with a soft thud. The air was different here, cooler, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. This forest, unlike the ones closer to home, was unnervingly quiet. No symphony of cicadas winding down their day, no last-gasp chirps from birds settling into their nests. Just the soft, rhythmic tick of my cooling engine, a stark punctuation mark in the profound stillness. I actually remember thinking, this is it. This is the solitude I've been craving. That's when he appeared, materializing from the shadows near a gnarled birch tree, leaning against its pale bark as if he'd grown there himself, part of the ancient landscape. He was an old-timer, weathered like driftwood, with a thick wool beanie pulled low despite the lingering warmth of the day. His eyes, the color of river stones, gray, ancient, and holding untold stories, fixed on me. "Camping alone?" he asked, his voice raspy, surprisingly soft against the quiet. I straightened up, a little defensive, a little proud. Yeah, first solo trip of the season. Figured the solitude would reset my head, get away from the noise. He didn't answer immediately, just sucked his teeth with a dry, papery sound, his gaze drifting from me to the darkening tree line, then back again, lingering. "Don't camp past the second switchback," he finally said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "Not tonight, not solo." I laughed, a nervous, dismissive sound that felt too loud in the quiet. "Oh, come on. People love to scare city boys with backwoods fairy tales." I tried to inject some levity, a confident shrug. I'd heard it all before, the local legends, the warnings meant to keep tourists out of the real wilderness. He didn't smile. His gaze remained fixed, unblinking, just repeated, softer this time, almost a whisper. "Not alone." Then, as if he were merely a figment of the fading light, he turned and melted into the dense scrub without much as a rustle of leaves, leaving behind only the unsettling echo of his words. My first mistake? I hiked anyway. The sun was almost gone, and I had a perfectly good campsite picked out on my map, well past his imaginary boundary. What could go wrong? The trail was surprisingly gentle for the first mile, a well-trodden path climbing gradually through a canopy of maple and ash. The last vestiges of golden hour light filtered through the leaves, dappling the forest floor in a mesmerizing slow strobe effect. It was peaceful, almost idyllic. So peaceful, in fact, that I found myself mentally composing the perfect Instagram caption. Something about finding peace in the wild, #solo adventure, #nature therapy. Captions I'd never actually post, but the thought process was a familiar comfort. I pushed on, feeling the rhythm of my steps, the backpack settling comfortably on my shoulders. Just as the light began to truly fade, I found it. A small, almost perfectly circular clearing on a bluff overlooking the valley. It was just big enough for my one-person tent, a natural little amphitheater offering a panoramic view. By the time the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, camp was up. My tarp was taut, guy lines anchored securely. The bear canister, a bright orange beacon against the darkening undergrowth, hung 15 yards west, suspended perfectly between two sturdy trees. And the fire ring? though I didn't plan on a large blaze, was neatly stacked with dry birch bark and kindling, ready for a quick warmth if needed. I boiled water on my little gas stove, the hiss and gurgle a welcome sound in the encroaching silence. Dehydrated chili never tasted so good as it did that night, eaten with a plastic spoon as I watched the valley below fade from deep indigo to absolute black. One star pierced the twilight, then hundreds, then thousands, until the sky was a velvet cloth embroidered with diamond dust. The wind, which had been a gentle whisper earlier, calmed completely. I felt a surge of pride, maybe even a touch of smugness that I'd ignored the old-timer's cryptic warning. He probably just wanted the spot for himself, right? This was exactly what I'd come for. Pure, unadulterated solitude.
That sound carries weirdly in hollows, I reasoned, trying to force logic onto the illogical. It was just my imagination, playing tricks in the dark. Still, I zipped my sleeping bag all the way to my chin, pulling the warmth tight around me, and made sure my headlamp was within easy, instant reach, just in case. For bears, obviously. Then came the first snap, sharp, undeniably distinct, like a dry branch under a heavy boot. It came from the east, just beyond the thin nylon of my tent. My breath hitched. I clicked on the headlamp, the beam a frantic, narrow tunnel through the inky blackness. All it revealed were the silent, towering trunks of pine and a thin, swirling mist that had begun to creep in. "Deer," I whispered, the word feeling flimsy and unconvincing even to myself. Just a deer. Second mistake. The next snap came closer, much closer, followed by a sickening drag, a heavy, uneven drag, something being pulled through the fallen leaves and undergrowth. It was too rhythmic, too deliberate to be an animal foraging. I sat bolt upright in my sleeping bag, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, a frantic drumbeat against the thin membrane of my tent. No deer walks like that. No deer drags itself like that. My mind raced, frantically searching for a rational explanation, but finding none. I considered the bear spray, my only real defense, which was in my pack, a mere 3 feet away. But suddenly, those 3 feet felt like 3 miles, an insurmountable distance in the suffocating darkness. The moon was a sickly, pale cataract behind a thick shroud of clouds, offering no light, only a dim, oppressive glow that barely illuminated the swirling mist. I could barely see my own breath ghosting away in the cold air. Then a new sound rose from the darkness, a low, guttural moan. It was almost human, but not quite. It held a raw, primal quality that bypassed my ears and vibrated deep inside my sternum, a sound that felt ancient and wrong. Wind doesn't moan, then pause. Wind doesn't plan its next note, doesn't hold its breath before letting out another low, mournful exhalation. This was deliberate. This was intelligent. My rationalizations crumbled. Panic began to claw its way up my throat. I fumbled with the zipper of my sleeping bag, my fingers clumsy with fear, then crawled to the tent door, peering out into the impenetrable blackness. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yet the blackness itself felt watched, felt heavy with an unseen presence. It was as if the forest held its breath, waiting. At precisely 2:14 a.m., according to the glowing display on my phone, something scraped the tent wall. It wasn't a branch. It wasn't the wind. It was slow, deliberate, a chilling, rhythmic shh, like a fingernail dragging across nylon, just inches from my head. Every cell in my body screamed. My breath caught in my throat, a suffocating knot of pure terror. And like an absolute idiot, a primal panicked response, I yelled, "Hey!" My voice cracked, thin and reedy, sounding like a terrified adolescent, completely devoid of any authority. The scraping stopped instantly. Absolute silence answered. That awful, polite silence of something deciding, something listening, weighing its next move. It was worse than any noise. Then came the knock. 3 distinct taps. Not a rustle, not a falling acorn, but a solid, deliberate thump, thump, thump at the footbox of my tent, right where my legs lay. Not wind, not a branch. This was a fist, a heavy, deliberate fist against the thin fabric separating me from whatever was out there. My lungs forgot their rhythm. My heart hammered so violently that I thought it would burst through my chest. Flight 1. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to get out, to escape. I grabbed the headlamp, fumbling it on, and slashed the beam through the tent fabric, a desperate, futile attempt to see. Only mesh and night stared back. But the impression of a massive dark shape, just beyond the light's reach, was burned into my mind. Adrenaline surged, a fiery jolt through my veins. I scrambled into my boots, not bothering with socks, my feet icy cold. Keys, phone, and the almost forgotten pepper spray were stuffed blindly into my pockets. My hands, trembling uncontrollably, ripped at the tent zipper, tearing it open. I burst through, leaving my sleeping bag, my dignity, half my sanity, and every single piece of gear behind.
It was all just stuff. I needed to live. I wish I could say I bravely stood my ground, that I faced down the unknown with courage and resolve. But terror, raw and elemental, is brutally honest. It strips away all pretense, all bravado. I ran. I just ran. The headlamp, a shaky cone of light bobbing wildly with every frantic stride, carved a desperate path through the absolute blackness. It revealed gnarled roots that seemed to trip me intentionally, jagged rocks that threatened to send me sprawling, and sudden, unseen drop-offs that I barely avoided. Behind me, the forest erupted. Not just a distant sound, but a cacophony of crashes, snapping saplings, heavy thuds against tree trunks. Something was keeping pace, not gaining, not falling behind, but actively herding me, pushing me down the trail. It was a terrifying, deliberate pursuit. The metallic tang of my own fear filled my mouth, sharp and acrid, like a child's bloodied knee. My breath hitched, each gasp tearing at my raw throat. The trail, which should have been a clear downhill path leading directly to the parking lot, seemed to play cruel tricks. Every switchback doubled back the wrong way. Every turn led to another, slightly different, unfamiliar stretch of trees. It was as if the path itself had been redrawn by malicious pranksters, designed to confuse, to disorient. Breath knifed my ribs, each inhalation a burning agony. My mind, usually so quick with rationalizations, was now a broken record, playing the old-timer's words on an endless loop. I pictured his stone eyes, his calm, unsettling certainty. Don't camp past the second switchback. Not tonight, not solo. Should have listened. Should have listened. The phrase became a frantic cadence, a desperate mantra with each pounding stride, each desperate gasping breath. I broke onto the gravel road a good half-mile from where the trailhead parking lot should have been, stumbling, knees bleeding, boots soaked through with dew and mud. My lungs burned, my legs screamed in protest, but I didn't stop. The thing, that presence, that unseen terror, whatever it was, halted at the very edge of the tree line. It didn't follow onto the open road, as if an invisible barrier held it back, or perhaps it was simply unwilling or unable to cross into the relative openness. I didn't wait to interpret, didn't pause to look back. I sprinted the final stretch, a desperate, adrenaline-fueled dash. My hands still shaking uncontrollably, fumbled with my keys, jamming the fob into the lock. The satisfying thunk of the doors unlocking was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. I dove into the driver's seat, slamming the door shut with a guttural cry of relief and pure, unadulterated fear. Only after the doors locked, after the metal and glass of my truck formed a fragile shield around me, did I dare to look up. Nothing visible. Only the silent, impenetrable wall of the forest. Yet I swear, the darkness itself seemed to lean closer, a tangible, curious weight pressing in. I started the engine, the roar of the V8 a comforting, defiant sound in the quiet night. High beams flooded the trunks of the trees like interrogation lights, pushing back the encroaching shadows. For a single, agonizing heartbeat, I considered retrieving my gear. $1,000 plus of high-end camping equipment, my tent, my pack, everything. Vanity lost. The thought of stepping foot back into that forest, even for a moment, was enough to send another wave of nausea washing over me.
I shifted into drive, tires spitting gravel as I peeled away, leaving the silent, watchful woods behind. At the 24-hour diner off the interstate, a beacon of fluorescent light and stale coffee, I sat shaking too badly to even hold the mug the kind waitress placed in front of me. She didn't ask questions, just refilled my water glass and gave me a knowing look. She'd seen worse, I suppose. People broken by the road, by life, by things they couldn't explain. I drove home at dawn, the sun rising like nothing had happened, painting the world in soft, innocent hues. The sheer normalcy of it felt like a cruel joke. Police? What would I report? Haunted woods? A monster that knocks on tents? They'd note the abandoned campsite, maybe fine me for littering, for leaving a mess, but they wouldn't understand. How could they? I left a lot behind in that forest. My expensive gear, yes. But more than that, I left a piece of myself. Part of me is still there, I think, coiled in that clearing, listening, forever caught between the terrifying sound of a knock and the desperate, unanswered silence that followed. The quiet woods, once a sanctuary, now hold a different kind of silence for me. If you've ever had a night like that, a story that keeps you awake, that makes you double-check the locks, drop it in the comments below. I'm always looking for those unsettling, unexplainable encounters. Might just turn one into a future video. And hey, if this channel is new to you, or if you just want to hear more tales of things that go bump in the night, consider hitting that subscribe button. I've got more nights like this to share. And trust me, you'll want the warning. I never found tracks, never saw a footprint, never learned what circles campers bold enough to ignore ancient advice. Maybe the locals keep quiet to protect tourism, to maintain the myth of pristine wilderness. Maybe they know that fear is healthier, more potent, when it remains nameless, formless. What I know for sure is this: warnings delivered without drama deserve drama-free obedience. Next time an old-timer with eyes like river stones and a voice like rustling leaves tells me where not to sleep, I'll nod. I'll change course. I'll find another spot, and I'll live to camp many more, hopefully less haunted nights. Because the wind doesn't knock. The wind doesn't wait for you to answer. And deep in certain forests, in the profound, unsettling silence, something mimics both wind and footstep, hoping you'll confuse the two until it's far, far too late.